Hello, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to BritAsianBuzz.com. Today we have a very important show about a very important topic. It's going to affect us, it's going to affect all of us, it's going to affect parts of our family, it's going to affect all the communities. So it's a very important topic, and just before I go into what it actually is, I would like to introduce our panel. And if you could explain, tell us your name and what you do, where you're from.
My name is Yusuf. I work as the Northwest Regional Manager for MEND, which stands for Muslim Engagement and Development. We work with the communities in terms of engagement and development around three key areas. The first being anti-Muslim hate crime and Islamophobia. The second being raising awareness and challenging some of the narratives on Muslims in the media. And thirdly, we work around the area of political participation.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Ibrahim. I work for an umbrella organisation in Bolton called Bolton Council Moss, and our aim is obviously to make sure the Muslim community is united in tackling issues in the borough and in the region as well.
Jazakallah khair. MashaAllah, we've got a very good panel here today. I know these guys personally, and my name, Billa, you obviously know. I'm your host for today, inshallah. First, what we're going to talk about is the counter-terrorism bill. A lot of you will probably be aware there's different, what they call now, we can edit this bit apart out, yeah? I mean, what they call the sign, I forgot what they call it. Is it change.com, would it be petition?
Oh yeah, change.org. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. They've been, there's quite a few petitions that have actually been going around. Yeah, about the counter-terrorism bill. Even last Friday we were in the masjid in Zakaria and all the other masjids, and they were actually signing these. And the counter-terrorism bill is going to affect each and every one of us. Theresa May, our Home Secretary, she's been pushing for this. We believe that even the Prime Minister is putting £130 million over the next 2 years into this as well. And what we'll do is we'll go straight into this. I will explain. First of all, what I want to do is ask you, Yusuf, a little bit about the bill, yeah, and how it's going to affect people.
Well, potentially it's a very damaging bill, but it isn't something that's completely come out of surprise. A lot of what's been put into this bill is something that has actually been in test phase in various scenarios. So, for example, one of the things is about preventing violent extremism policy, the statutory across the board, but a lot of prevent work has already been going on.
Yeah, can you explain a little bit about what the prevent is?
Prevent was a strategy introduced by the Labour government, actually, to prevent violent extremism, which nobody disagrees with, as a result of some of the kind of issues that had happened post the July 2005 bomb. However, the unintended consequences of prevent as a policy, trying to roll it across communities, the communities were left with a lot of suspicion on how prevent was delivered. People who were tasked to deliver prevent didn't always understand it, and that only further added more suspicion as far as the communities were concerned. People couldn't explain what it was, and there was reports that came out. For example, Arun Kandani's very famous report called Spooked, which interviewed anonymously many youth workers who said they were being asked for names of people, and they were being asked to do things around radicalisation, which a lot of youth didn't understand. So, for example, as a youth could be brought into a community setting and do some kind of activity, and then later I find out that it's got something linked to preventing violent extremism, whereas previously I would have just thought it's just around community cohesion or just building awareness of youth. So from many perspectives, prevent was seen as a policy which was a failed policy. I mean, Dame Eliza Manningham-Buller, who used to be the head of MI5, during July 2005, has on record just recently on the debate on the counter-terrorism bill said prevent is a failed policy. So I mean, me saying it is one thing, the Muslim community saying it is another. The person who was kind of at the top of the establishment as far as counter-terrorism was concerned is saying this. So it's pretty much unfortunately seen as a failed policy. And a lot of what's in the counter-terrorism bill, for example, making prevent statutory, gives people worries Muslims a lot, because all the kind of stories they've heard about prevent, some of them unfairly, but unfortunately when you can't explain something, it leads to even more questions.
Do you know any stories? Any stories that you can relate to? Something that you know of? One or two stories maybe?
A lot of this kind of stuff is anecdotal, and people obviously want to remain anonymous when it comes to this kind of thing. But I can tell you that, you know, I mean, I've engaged with people who've innocently taken Prevent money and then been asked to produce heat maps, you know, around radicalisation where it doesn't exist. I know of a sister last year who was a nurse, who was started practicing a little bit more, and she was met by the counter-terrorism official when she came back from Umrah and Hajj. There are all these kind of stories where people are affected by this, and most of it is because I don't know much about Prevent, I don't know much about counter-terrorism. I'm just giving you a simple example. I could be an official who works in the health service, for example. I don't know very little about counter-terrorism. I see a little bit on the news. I don't have that many Muslim friends. You can't really blame me if my boss is, and you know, I have some kind of training which starts telling me that I need to look out for these telltale signs of radicalisation. Some of those telltale signs of radicalisation could be something as simple as someone just starting to practice their religion a little bit more. These people are not trained to understand first what the problem with radicalisation is, never mind look out for the telltale signs of radicalisation. So all of this, the unintended consequence of all of this is just making communities feel even more kind of, you know, second-class citizens as Muslims.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. I mean, I'll ask you a little bit more about that later on.
Yes.
How they're doing, what their policies are, how they're going to go about it, because we hear that people and teachers and asked to spy, and different people will look at that as well. Brother Ibrahim, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I think my main issue, and a lot of people's main issue, is around the definition of extremism.
Okay.
I think that's the main issue, and I think the government and a lot of agencies are getting mixed up with terms around conservatism and extremism, really.
Okay.
And I think that's the problem, really. And yeah, we don't know what the definition of extremism is, and sooner or later, you know, all the Muslims will be extremists because they're, you know, fervent fundamentalist views are just basic followers of Islam, really.
Yeah. Can anybody else be a terrorist apart from Muslim? Or is it only reserved for Muslims?
Well, anybody can, but the thing is, you know, and the common then perception is Muslims aren't doing enough, and we get that from the right-wing rhetoric as well. But, you know, all these terrorists who have, and again, they're a very, very small minority, they don't emanate from our mosques and madrasas.
Okay.
They are usually people who have been radicalised from the internet and that
Yeah.
kind of stuff.
Okay, yeah.
So, as a Muslim community, you know, we don't condone extremism and terrorism.
Absolutely not.
None whatsoever.
No, we don't, no.
And our mosques and madrasas are doing more than enough.
Yeah.
And will continue to do that.
Inshallah.
Inshallah.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, this, you know, we've been tied with the same brush, I think.
Yeah.
The whole Muslim community.
And one thing that gets to me is that I've got friends and people all over, different communities, different background, culture, and religion and no religion, and they always ask me, a few of them ask me, oh, I think that the Muslims should get together, and whenever there's a terrorist attack, even though these people have hijacked the name of Islam, and they're not doing it, because Islam is totally against terrorism. Totally against terrorism. Nowhere is it say go and kill innocent, and nothing like this is found in the Quran. The thing is, what they ask us to do is that apologise. Somebody does a terrorist attack, they ask us to apologise, yeah? Where you see there's things going on. Only the other day in America, the atheist guy went over and he killed 3 innocent Muslim youth.
Well,
You know what I mean?
if you ask me, should every American apologise for what that man done, or for everybody that lived in his state? You know, should every person that belonged to his state apologise to the rest of the Americans? I'd say that's scandalous. It's ridiculous. It's stupid to expect that. So therefore, you know, to ask of the Muslims, you're right. You know, there's this expectation that Muslims will apologise for every kind of, you know, sin done in the name of or you know, quotes unquote Islam or being Muslims. But that's stupid. You know, I don't expect you know, every time a man commits a crime against a woman, which is, you know, of a kind of of a prejudiced nature towards women because of the way he views women. Or for example, you could just take the grooming thing at the moment. Do I expect every man on television to apologise just because of what Jimmy Savile has done, or people like Gary Glitter did? You know, does every musician have to apologise? Of course not. So just the idea that, you know, expecting Muslims to apologise for every sin done in their name is pretty stupid, actually.
Yeah, I mean, I think that they should be apologising to us. If they're associating terrorists with Muslims, I think those people that do that should turn. And I said this to them, and it went quite. And the same argument I put forward to them: did you apologise for Hitler? Did you apologise for the IRA? All these different organisations that do things, Yeah, whether they for Irish, whether they do it for a culture, a nation, a religion, have you apologised?
Yeah.
And they say no. So why should we be expected? Right, okay, we can go into this current terrorism bill. When does it come into effect?
It's actually in effect as of now. So
As of
yesterday,
now,
Teresa May announced in 24 hours' time the counter-terrorism bill will be in effect.
Yeah, and how did it get passed? Because I believe there was meant to be a voting. Then we hear there wasn't a voting. What happened?
What normally happens when it comes to...
Sorry, if I ask you, I mean, they were saying something about it received a royal assent.
Yeah.
Can you explain what that means?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Every bill, so regardless of whether it's the counter-terrorism bill, everything that's made law, has to receive royal assent, because the way our parliamentary democracy works, when a bill is proposed, it goes through a particular journey, in Parliament, then in the House of Lords, and eventually, by the time before it gets made a law, the way our system works, it needs royal assent, so it needs the monarchy to say okay to it.
Right.
Technically speaking, our monarchy is more, our queen is more powerful than the actual parliamentarian. She could turn around and refuse to accept any bill. However, convention, if you understand convention dictates the way our system has evolved. That queen would never do that. She'd never overrule parliament. So anything that her government produces, which goes through the normal journey of parliament, gets royal assent. So that's basically royal assent. Now, the normal procedure is when a bill is introduced into parliament, there's something called pre-legislative scrutiny. So they before it becomes a bill and it goes into parliament properly, it's discussed, debated, and there's consultation. On this particular occasion, for this counter-terrorism bill, there was no pre-legislative scrutiny. There wasn't consultation. In effect, given the situation, this is what the government would claim, given the situation as far as young people going to fight in Syria is concerned, there's a need and an urgent need to rush through this bill. Right?
Okay.
So that in effect is what they did with this bill, which is not normally what they would do with most bills. You've got to understand Parliament will go into recess, there'll be a general election. It might be possible that another government, regardless of what it looks like, might have not gone through with this bill. So this government wanted to rush it through, right? So they didn't have no pre-legislative scrutiny. They had no consultation as such, that what they normally do. And this came out in November. Around December time, it went through its stages in Parliament. The reason it never had a vote, quite simply, was this: if on any bill all three major parties agree that we're okay with this bill, then it doesn't need a vote. It only needs
cross-party, wasn't it?
It was cross-party support, However, having spoken to some people from the Labour benches, what they've told me is, for example, let's take the scenario that Labour opposed the bill, as a whole, as a party, right? Therefore, the government would have had to put it to vote.
Right. Okay.
Had they put it to vote, there was a good likeliness that the government would have won. The reason I say this is there were some amendments that the Labour MPs, not the members of the House of Lords, asked for in December. And when they asked for them amendments, they put them amendments to the vote, and they lost. The government won. Because the government's got the majority of MPs, So if Conservatives and Lib Dems, who make the majority party, if they're whipped by their parties, then effectively they can put through anything on any situation. That's the whole point of how our parliamentary system works,
Can it be overturned, though, in the future?
Yes, of course it can. And not only that, I mean, if you ask for my opinion, and I know you've not necessarily asked for it, but if you ask for my opinion, I think a lot of this, forget the fact that it's, it makes second-class citizens out of us, or Muslims will be unduly affected more than any other citizen. Because, for example, right now, under current legislation, on Schedule 7, being stopped at airports, if you're Pakistani, you're 154 times more likely than the average white person to be stopped. So we know we're unduly affected by this stuff. Whether MI5 says it's not right to profile Muslims or not. The truth is, we are profiled, So it is likely to affect us more than any other citizen.
Something I want to add there is since 2001, some 70% of all arrests under anti-terrorism legislation have been of non-whites.
Wow. And yet, if you look at another statistic which Ibrahim's aware of, if you look at every single terrorist attack in Europe, mainland Europe, from 2007 to 2013, Europol did the statistics, so Europol records data of these statistics. Every failed, foiled or completed attack, out of that, 0.7 of them were what you would describe as Islamist, the rest were not. So if you see, so these statistics, they don't come from nowhere. They're not, you and me are not making these statistics. We're getting these statistics from credible sources. Now, if you put those statistics and figures like the one that you just mentioned together, it does look like, you know, Muslims are unduly affected by this,
Yeah.
regardless of how bad the problem is coming from Muslims. Yeah, it's important to understand that. Now, going back to the later point on this.
Yeah.
So this bill has obviously kind of, you know, been put through, and my opinion is this, that people are just going to be so incompetent and so not knowing the situation. So if I'm a teacher, now I'm asked, it's statutory duty for me to recognise this. If I don't understand the problem, if I'm not trained well enough, then how do you expect me to deliver it?
Okay.
So the point is, there's going to be a lot of wrongful arrests, or there's going to be a lot of wrongful suspicion, or people put into the system, young people, for example, existing child programme. I think over 1,000 under 11s have been put through anti-extremism programming. It could be for something as simple as them singing in the sheet and somebody recognises that.
Sending a picture on WhatsApp. Through
but under 11s won't even be doing that. Under 11s will just say something in the classroom and the teacher might recognise it as one of the telltale signs of extremism, and then put them through this anti-extremism programming. Now, the effect of that on a young person who isn't radicalised is too young to not even know the difference between I don't know, ISIS and say Bashar al-Assad. They probably don't. If you're under 11, you don't. When I was under 11, I didn't know much about Soviet Union, which affected most people's lives at the time. Can you imagine what that's going to do to that person once they've been put through anti-extremism programming? How that's going to put the backs up of their parents. So I just don't think a lot of it's workable, just from a practical point of view, not just from a Muslim point of view. Just from the average citizen in Britain, I don't think a lot of the measures are practical. That's why universities were up in arms. Universities last week, they put a letter in the Guardian with some 500 odd academics saying we're completely against some parts of this bill.
Professors, weren't they?
Yeah, professors.
500 professors, I was reading something about whether 500 professors, and they put something for you. 520 professors signed a letter to stand against the counter-terrorism bill.
And the reason they stood against the counter-terrorism bill wasn't because they were particularly defending Muslims. What they thought is this bill is going to take the right away from people in the university format, in British tradition. You should be able to talk about anything and everything. Some of our own mainstream politicians in their university days were very left or very kind of communist and, you know, linked to Russia. Some of them were, you know, so university is a place where you should be able to have a debate with anybody regardless of what background they come from. You know, it's an open place, and free speech should be encouraged.
And they're going to put a stop to that, though, haven't they?
Well, according to the bill they are, but last week, because of the result of that letter, some amendments were made, good amendments, which kind of took away government's ability in the area of universities to really come down.
Well, what's going around? I mean, is there anything that you want to talk about?
I was just going to say that in terms of activities, I think it's all about curtailing activities of the Muslim community. So last year, it's perfectly okay to go to Syria and raise money for Syria and get over. I know things have changed there, and it's not safe.
It's not safe
Syria
as well.
not safe. But and at one stage there was that double standards and hypocrisy about us as a government and a country potentially taking military action against Bashar al-Assad and whatnot. And then we did a bit of a U-turn, and so there was that conflicting message about people going there genuinely to deliver aid and
like
raise
myself,
money.
I've gone over genuinely to humanitarian.
And raise money, and I know people like yourselves who said, well, I'm not going again to Syria because I know. Well, we know for a fact that when you come back from Syria, even if it's for just an aid visit, you will be questioned by
I did. I had counter-terrorism police that came round, and they said, where before they used to just come down, kick your door open, and they start spying on you, this, that, and the other. But they didn't do that. They just came round, they took an appointment with us and all the team, and they came over, asked us some basic questions, and they were happy, and they were on the way. And the thing is, though, it's not fair on people like us who want to genuinely go out and go and help people. There's people who genuinely want to go out, but the thing is, they might be brushed with the same thing. You can see that happening now.
I've always said, I have this problem with, they kept saying that you're going to become radicalised when you come back to the UK. Radicalised for what? You're seeing kids and orphans and
that's what you do.
Broken homes, and yet you're trying to help out with medical equipment and, give them a loving, hug and, some food and money and whatnot. What are you going to be radicalised about? And I just have this real problem about that perception of the fact that you then, Billa, will be a threat on the streets of the UK. And I just really find that hard to believe. And
it's a human instinct.
It's
right. It's a human instinct, isn't it? Like even Alan Henning was a Muslim, and it's a human instinct. foreseeing what you see and not to be moved by it and wanting to do that little bit more. And that's why he kept going back, and so many non-Muslims will go back and do the same thing. You know, a lot of, it's like saying, well, you know, some of these people who have been killed as hostages, not just handling, you know, there was the Japanese fella, and you know, there's constantly this kind of stuff, you know. They're not going to stop, you know. Do people care? They're going to go out and try and make a difference. Yeah,
they are.
What are you going to turn around to them and say, oh, well, you know, you're radical? Well, if that's what makes you radical, is that a bad thing? Is that a bad kind of radical?
But this is not what Islam teaches. What you see, asking for ransoms, doing this and that, where is it in Islam? There's nowhere in there. But yet, people think that, you know. So if we can go through a bit of the bill, what we'll do here, we've got a few things here, what they're going to put onto the bill. First of all, I'll go through each one, and then what we'll do, we'll speak, and if you know anything about it, if not, we can move on to the next one. The first one, what we're looking at is your passport will be seized up to 14 days without due process, yet on suspicion alone. And if you do not hand in your passport, you get 6 month imprisonment. What do you know about this one?
Well, at the moment, for example, you know, for you to be able to take my passport away, you have to give me a good enough reason. You have to give me some kind of justification. And if you're a normal border police, you probably can't take my you can't take my passport away. Yeah? Under this current law, a normal border police at the airport, right, can question me and not give me a justification and take my passport away for up to 2 weeks before he puts me in front of the court. And putting me in front of the court could be just a magistrate court, and they could hear the reason why they took my passport, the suspicion they had, in a closed court without a lawyer.
But it says that where you don't have to, you're not going to be present there.
That's right. But amendments were made. I've not had a chance to look at the actual, you know, the full amendments, but I know amendments were made where there is now judicial oversight in this and the TPINS area, where it wasn't previously, because non-Muslim members of the Lords were concerned that this is going a little bit too far. You know, you need a good enough reason to take something like someone's passport away. You can't just, can you imagine, like, you know, for example, when I came back from Hajj, I've later found this out, everyone was being questioned, especially people like me, as soon as we came in, only for a few brief minutes. And it later turned out that intelligence indicated that young people like me, who hadn't gone with their family, were going to the Hajj to find solace because and find radicalizers down there because, you know, that they were disillusioned with Britain. Yeah. So imagine someone gives them that kind of information, some organisation like Quilliam. Yeah. All of a sudden, the border police can misinterpret that, not understand it completely, and just think, all right, you know what? I take his passport away. Do I have to give him a reason? No, not necessarily. And that makes it worrying.
Can normal police take your passport from you as well?
No, they'd have to put it through the court system.
They have to put it through the court system. And do you know, another thing where I want to ask, do you know this law that they've just passed, obviously taking your passport from you and stuff like that, is that part of European law, or is that just here in the UK?
Just here in the UK. In fact, some of what's been proposed in this counter-terrorism bill could easily be challenged in the European courts or in other international courts. I mean, I'm not a lawyer, but I know some of this stuff doesn't probably sit very comfortably with human rights law. Exactly.
I mean, what about yourself? But say if somebody came and took your passport from you, how would you feel?
Well, I mean, it's that worrying trend, isn't it? It's about being marginalised, criminalised, labelled as criminals, and you know, they've already said, you know, for the alleged terrorists coming back from Syria, or the radicalisers, you know, it's all about citizenship, isn't it? Taking away the passports and them being in no man's land, really. They're not welcomed on mainland Britain, really. So it's just another one of these trends which unfortunately is going to disproportionately affect Muslims in this country.
Yeah, I mean, can this law also affect other communities, like the Hindu and the Christian and that? Or is it only for Muslims, what they're looking at?
In the future, it could potentially, because, say, at the moment, you know, the fact that we are the ones under the radar, I mean, you know, on the radar all the time, whether it's in the newspapers, whether it's in terms of suspicion. Right now, it's the Muslims, but we know for a fact previously it was the Irish community. Prior to that, it was the Jewish community. The Jewish community has been here 350 years, and the Jewish community, you know, not long ago, they used to write some nasty headlines about Jewish people, and Jewish people were under suspicion. And even when in Germany, when they had Kristallnacht, people here, you know, made Jewish people feel like second-class citizens. Again, you know, you could say the same of any other community. Typically, like someone like the Daily Mail, in the past used to see Muslims as Asians who were well integrated into society, and black people as the problem, right? So the future, this kind of law can be very easily affect not just Muslims, but it could be, you know, say for example, you know, it's the Buddhist community, for example, that people start looking at in suspicion as a result of Buddhist people committing crimes against different groups in Burma or in Sri Lanka or elsewhere, yeah? All of a sudden this could unduly affect the Buddhist community. It could affect any minority group. It's just at this moment in time, because of the suspicious circumstances around which Muslims exist, as far as kind of the establishment is concerned, as far as media and opportunistic politicians are concerned, it's the Muslims. But tomorrow it could be anybody else under this kind of law, which is why a lot of people who really believe this is a country where freedom of speech and civil liberties are really, really important, they're against this because this could affect anybody.
Yeah, okay. Ibrahim, do you want to add something? I know that Brother Ibrahim needs to leave in a second, so if you can add something to this, if you've got anything.
Yeah, I just want to say that generally the Joe blogs amongst the Muslim community are not really fully aware of the implications and the impact this bill's going to have. And I think we've done our bit in terms of raising the awareness and petitions and whatnot, but I think even then we've still got a lot of work to do, and like Yusuf said, we'll see what in terms of case law some of these things how they'll pan out, and see how the Muslim community really react. But I think the signs aren't good really in terms of the future for Muslims, but hopefully they'll improve.
Testing times, as I say.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, Jazakallah, thanks for
inviting me. Jazakallah, Brother Ibrahim needs to leave now, so we'll carry it on. I mean, we make dua for him, for his mother, isn't it?
Yes.
She has stroke. May Allah make it easy for him. May Allah ease her pain and grant her shifa and speedy. You can cut that. Okay, we're speaking about the community and how it can affect the community. Do you want to add something?
Alhamdulillah, despite, and I agree with Ibrahim, I mean, our community is on a fast-track process of learning how these things work, because we're not quite there as far as other minority communities concerned, whether it's the kind of gay community or Jewish community. These are communities who also had it as difficult as the Muslims, but they've understood how to challenge some of what they saw as injustices towards themselves. Yeah. As Muslims, we're in the very, very early stages of trying to understand and make an impact. But alhamdulillah, the signs are encouraging, because despite our understanding being limited, there is more and more opposition, which I haven't seen before, and a kind of real, sense of kind of people gravitating around issues that they haven't. Like, for example, myself, I know some mosques wouldn't touch subjects like this in a million years. They won't talk about it because they felt like they'd be under suspicion. So they just would avoid talking about subjects like this. But as a result of the counter-terrorism bill, alhamdulillah, a lot of mosques have come to us and said, "Oh, we should have been talking about these things. We want to talk about these things. We want to tell our audience because everyone's going to be a bit affected." Previously, and maybe I'm being a little bit disparaging even about myself because I'm a member of the Muslim community as well. But in our communities, sometimes the attitude was, I know things are bad, but let's bury our head in the sand and eventually,
we've seen that, haven't we? How many people, we had to keep sending text messages out and telling people, look, you need to sign the petition, you need to sign the petition, over and over again. It kept happening, but people were just so blind to it, go, oh, it's not affecting me, but little did they realise it's going to affect them.
Exactly. But if we compare that to, because you and me have been activists for a long time, alhamdulillah, and a lot of my activism I've learned from people like you, 5 years ago, or even 7 years ago, our community didn't want to touch any of this stuff. So it was a lot more harder to get them to sign a petition, or even turn up to hustings, or hold a politician to account. It's like, oh, the system's against us, or we don't deal with politics, and all this kind of stuff. Alhamdulillah, as a result of the negativity, Allah's provided us with an opportunity where a lot of our community, where previously they used to think, right, okay, like I said, bury your head in the sands, leave it, this will wash away, things will change, we can't, we're now, there's people talking about this stuff that haven't, there's people engaged in this stuff that haven't in the past, It's no longer, the option to do nothing no longer exists. So whatever you value as a Muslim, whether it's your, I say to Islamic societies, you value your talks about marriage, right, because that's the only subject that they seem to be talking about nowadays, and no disrespect, because I have a lot of time for some of the ISOCs, but ISOCs tell me this themselves as a criticism because they're so scared of having good speakers come and talk about subjects which might be seen as controversial. Whatever you value, for example, like marriage, you won't have a marriage to protect in the future if you just leave things as they are. Or if you value the fact that we have a future in this country, you have children, the future of your children is at risk if you do nothing at all. And I'm not trying to sound alarming, but that is the reality. If you do nothing at all, these things, whether it's measures against us today or measures against us tomorrow, will only become more and more difficult, to the point where just practicing, as Ibrahim touched upon earlier, just normal everyday Islam, it's not like we're advocating violence against anybody or anything like that. I'm just talking about the many mosques that you and me attend, or the many Muslim brothers that you and me meet, they're not talking about ISIS, they're just talking about practicing their religion. And what's normative Islam is now seen as a threat in some quarters. Why? Because we've not necessarily stood up for it. So is there anything wrong standing up for, you know, normative Islam? Normative Islam means I can have an opinion which says, you know, for example, this is my view on homosexuality. That doesn't mean I'm advocating, I wouldn't advocate any violence towards, I have gay friends, you know, people who are gay. You don't have to agree with somebody. You and me might, you know, you might be a Liverpool fan, I'm a Manchester United fan, you know. Does it really matter, you know, to be your friend? You know, it's not like I'm saying, you know, kill all Liverpool fans. So we as a society, we as Muslims, we're actually, you know, fairly well, you know, most people would say, oh, we're not necessarily that tolerant, we don't feel that affinity to Britain. But polling after polling suggests that Muslim communities do feel, you know, a part of Britain. They don't have no issue with anybody else, But if they have certain views within their religion, why should they, you know, apologise about those views? That's their religion. That's
Again, it goes back to what I was saying earlier on. Why should Muslims? And the thing is, at the moment, they feel threatened. They're going to go back in. At the moment, we see a lot of interfaith programs, got stuff going on. What's going to happen? It's going to drive a lot of people, and maybe it could make a few people are more extreme. But these people are against us, and it could go against them. Whether people are in their favour, I mean, and all Muslims are against terrorism.
Of course,
we're all against it. You know, and it's going to go. If we just go,
can we go? I was just going to say that's a very important point that you just kind of brought to the fore, which is this idea of let's park everything to a side as to what the counter-terrorism bill, how it affects us, is going to affect us as Muslims, and let's reverse back to that prevent thing that we were looking at earlier on, right? Okay, post 2001, after the September 11th, and post 2005, there were a lot of laws that came into place, and a lot of measures to really make things difficult, apparently, for the extremists, right? Now, I would say something like prevent. The unintended consequences of something like prevent, which was supposed to be about preventing violent extremism, has actually sent more young people underground and more young people actually wanting to become radicalized. And I'll give you a very simple example of this. If you're taking away the ability of my imam or my community leader to speak to me about a difficult subject, about why I'm aggrieved about what happened in Syria, or why I'm aggrieved about what happened in Fallujah, if you're taking that right away from him, or he's so scared he doesn't want to talk about it, about what's happened in Palestine, I might not have no context to go to anybody respectable, anybody learned to talk about this thing. My only context might come through the internet, on my own.
And go into their channels.
And that's what's happened to a lesser or more extent. You know, a lot of the times the journey of a young person who wants some context on this kind of issue, because it's natural as a Muslim to feel aggrieved about any injustice happening across the world.
Definitely.
You need a context, but you turn up to the mosque. I remember when I was a young person, this is no disrespect, I'm not going to name the mosque, but this is where we were as a community at the time. Something like Fallujah happens, you saw the pictures from Fallujah. Every Muslim, non-Muslim saw what was happening then, Of course that's going to disturb you, of course that's going to make you very upset, of course you're going to want to reach out, you know, there's nothing radical about it. But guess what, you go to your mosque, and they don't even mention that. They're even scared to mention the dua about Fallujah. Can you imagine what that does to a young person?
Yeah, you can just imagine that.
If as a young person you think to yourself, oh my God, my mosques have sold me out. It's a perfectly reasonable, even though I understand the mosque were selling them out, they themselves were scared to talk about this issue. But as a young person, it's perfectly reasonable to then try and correlate that in your head and think, you know what, all these Muslims have already sold me out. You know what? This is bad news, man.
So then he goes onto the internet and
or wherever he goes,
or whatever he finds, and he looks, and the answer he's looking for, which isn't really the answer, he actually finds it there. And that's when they think, no, this is right. They're right from there.
Because if Prevent had worked in 2005, it's been around for a long time. There's already money being spent. You know, his players announced £80 million worth of money all those years ago, and everybody's like it's going to really do anything, According to them, okay, if it's done anything, why are more people now going to Syria, or more young people being radicalized, or more young people radicalization doesn't come from nowhere. Why more young people don't even bother about the British political system more than ever before? Why don't young people believe in the establishment? Why don't young people believe they've got a chance at why do they feel alienated? You know, are we going down the road of France? And when I say France specifically, I've met lots of you have as well, Billa, French Muslims who've moved to the UK and believe this, say that we're in a luckier position than they are. Because the policies in France, as far as the immigrants are concerned, not just Muslims, have been very, very difficult for them. They've had riots, and they've been, their chances at a job are a lot less. What does that do to them?
Definitely.
it turns into criminality, doesn't
Of course it does, definitely. They go underground and they start looking at different avenues. Inshallah, that'll be keys anyway. Okay, we'll just go through a few of these. I'll just read them out. And is there anything that you want to add to it?
Yeah,
this is what the bill's going to be doing. British citizen can be banned up to 2 years, yeah, from the UK on a mere suspicion. Yeah, they can do that. Is there anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, of course, because what this means in reality is this very simply. You could be returning from a flight in Pakistan, yeah. Right? Someone in your village, which often happens in our countries, right, who doesn't like your side of the family, or there might be some family feud or whatever, could say, such and such a person met such a person in Kashmir, yeah. That might be enough reason for, and someone reports you to the consulate reports it back to Britain, you come back to Britain, and they don't need to give you this justification, that's all they need, yeah. And they can turn around and say, you know what, we revoke your citizenship away from you. You might not have a dual passport, you might not have a Pakistani passport, you might be stuck in Pakistan, stateless.
Yeah.
Potentially this
so they send you back to the country that you've actually come from. So they put you in the plane back.
Or you could be at the airport stateless. I honestly don't know in practical terms how that's going to work, because this is unprecedented. You could be left stateless. There's a young chap from Somalia who only has British citizenship, and I think recently he's already had this. He's had his passport taken away from him and his British citizenship. It happened to Brother Mozambique for a while until
and now they released it without charge.
Without charge, exactly. So technically speaking, on the most basic of suspicions, it's completely probable.
Maybe it was a trial run for this. Mozambique, what had happened with him, and that come on.
Very much so, but it's a worrying thing. Now, alhamdulillah, again, on this particular measure, people are really concerned about it, because this could happen to anybody at any time. There has been some judicial oversight coming to it now. I don't know to what extent. So the fact that judicial oversight is there does lessen the blow. It lessens the blow because it means an independent judge who won't be interfered by government will make a decision on you. That's a lot better.
So that can happen.
That's what some of the amendments that have gone in have put judicial oversight into stuff like this.
And is that amendment within the bill, or is it not in the bill?
Yeah, no. So the vote that took place 2 days ago was to make sure that those amendments that the House of Lords asked for example, judicial oversight on this, were put into the bill, and that was passed. Yeah. Okay. So the version of the bill now is a less. I mean, it's a bad bill for Muslims, right? It's a bad bill for us.
For all the communities. Yeah. There will not be Muslims in the future. It's going to be.
However, what happened in the House of Lords is there were measures and amendments made to lessen the blow and make it a lot more harder just for any old person to create suspicion without any judicial oversight, close courts, all these kind of things. So there has been things that have been put in place to make it a lot more kind of.
Even nationalities. It says here they're going to have a no-fly list on entire nationalities.
Wow! Can you imagine that?
Can you imagine a whole nation is going to come over and say, "Hang on, your van."
That can be challenged in court. Again, I don't think it's practical at all.
Yeah, we can do. Okay, we'll go down. Councils, schools, universities are made to spy on Muslims by law. This is where the professors probably came in to it, and they're not going down here again. University will be for okay. The bill is per se disruptive, liable discrimination, and then it goes on saying about the internet companies as well, where they'll be asked to spy on your online activity.
Well, a lot of this, after the Snowden affair, we know a lot of this already exists, and that's what friends tell me, but that's no reason not to oppose some of the stuff in this bill and other things. For example, one of the major things which affects every citizen is something called the Communications Data Bill, The Communications Data Bill, without the counter-terrorism bill, they tried to put through Parliament about 2 years ago, Okay. Alhamdulillah, it was opposed and it failed. It never made its way through Parliament because, there was opposition against this bill. What the Communications Data Bill means is this. Every single citizen, regardless of colour, creed or whatever, every single citizen, all of the telephone calls, all of the text messages, all of their internet data, email messages is held by the internet service provider or the telephone communications company for 12 months. Now, you're a man who knows IT, Billa, that's an expensive exercise. To hold that much data on anybody is an expensive exercise, number one, The argument made by the people in the intelligence community was, well, even if it costs us a lot of money to give to telephone companies to save this much data on people, it's okay because it's still less than the amount of money we spend in the military. So that was the argument made for them. But this is the important bit here, That's like saying, and I'm quoting here from Shami Chakrabarti because I think, any analogy I come up with isn't half as good as the analogy that she came up with to explain the Communications Data Bill, Right? And this is what she said. She said, well, we know marital rape exists, some people in their own bedrooms rape their own wives, We know it exists. So what we'll do is we'll fit a CCTV camera in every single marital bedroom up and down the country. But the only time we'll go in and look at that footage is if a wife turns around and says, you know, my husband raped me. Yeah, absolutely. But why this is stupid is this. So they hold that amount of information, but you don't need to worry because you've got nothing to hide, is what you've been told, yeah? However, we know on the previous versions of this, you know, lesser versions, something like RIPA, which was a Regulatory Investigative Powers Act, which gave local authorities the right to listen to your phone calls. Only on suspicion of terrorism. We know local authorities listen to people's phone calls and spy on people for tipping litter. We know that they listen to people's phone calls because they try to change their catchment area for their children.
We hear now in televisions, the Xbox One, we hear the TV and all these different things.
So do you trust, you know, do you trust authorities, you know, to have so much information on you and not abuse that power? They say it on terrorism, but guess what? Someone somewhere, do you trust lots and lots of people who are not well trained to not tap into your information and go and have a look through your phone calls? Of course we don't. We don't want to be living in that kind of society. And again, you know, another perspective of this argument around data retention is this, that all the kind of people who've been involved in attacks, intelligence services have known about.
Right.
It's not that they've not known about them. They, according to them, their argument, we've just not had the resources to keep tabs on them. But it's not that they've not known about them; they've already known about them. So what are they doing with this? You know, are they looking for people who they don't know about because they didn't know about people? It just doesn't make sense, yeah. So Alhamdulillah, the communications data bill was defeated. However, a chappie called Sir Lord Ian Blair now, I think he's a sir as well. He used to be the head of the Metropolitan Police. He's now in the House of Lords. Him and several other lords tried to put this back in to the bill, the communications data area, and alhamdulillah, you know, some lords opposed it, so it was taken away. So again, the blow has been lessened on this. The communications data bill doesn't exist at the moment, although they're going to try and come back with that because that's what was mentioned.
I just don't understand how they're going to pass it, because you could have had a conversation about something when you're speaking to somebody, and then you a follow on to that. You might have said something, and they can take it out of context. You know,
exactly.
That's what's going to happen.
And can you imagine? You know, do you not think it's even a waste of money just holding that much data on everybody? It shouldn't be right.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, and then, you know, going on to here, it talks about how, you know, the teachers, colleagues are going to be spying on colleagues, teachers on students, and there's going to be all sorts going on, doctors on the reporting on patients. We already know about it. I heard from somebody where the actual nurses and the doctors, they've been also being taught about, is it prevent?
Yeah, they've been taught about prevent and the signs of radicalisation. You know, when you read that, the only thing that comes to my mind, there's a German film called The Lives of Others, I would seriously encourage anybody to watch that film. I don't know if it's a plug for a film or whatever it is, but why? Because, the film, it's a German film, and it's set at a time in East Germany when the Stasi, you've heard of the Stasi, right? Existed, and literally husbands were spying on wives. So this is the kind of thing that we're literally saying, that eventually we want to get to a society where everybody's watching everybody else. Is that the kind of society you want to live in? Is that the kind of society, forget just Muslims, is that the kind of society British people want to live in, where we're watching our backs constantly?
It's like going back to what you were saying earlier on. There's somebody there who's never met a Muslim in their life. Well, how do they know what radicalisation, how do they know what terrorism is? Somebody's there, he goes over, oh, can I go and pray? I like to go and pray. Little do they know that they pray 5 times a day. You know what I mean? So they're going to go over, they're going to go and pray. Oh, that guy's radical, they write it down, they pass information over. Will they get financial benefit from this? Or is it part of their job?
No. This is it. That's what I'm trying to say. That no, if anything, what prevent statutory basic means you're in trouble if you don't report a child.
Seriously,
Or if you're in trouble if you don't report a patient who's got signs of radicalisation.
I actually know somebody who's actually at the college, and they what are they doing now? They're doing the X-rays and stuff, and they also had to go on a course as well. For the preventive, were 2 or 3 days or something, and they were explaining.
I feel for these people. I feel for them because I have nothing. No, I feel for them because if I try and empathise and put myself into this kind of role, I'm working, you know, in a very high pressure job, and I might not know. Why should I need to know about something so much? I might not know many things, and if I don't have a proper understanding, how am I even going to be able to deal with these people? And this is like low-level officials, I can tell you that when Prevent first came out, I dealt with senior-ranking officials, and even some of them didn't understand Prevent properly. Even some of them didn't understand counter-terrorism properly. Even some of them didn't understand Islam properly. I mean, we had, like, you know, there was a lot of well-meaning people. For example, you know, we had a mosque visit in Manchester, and some senior civil servants turned up to this mosque visit, and they turned up with Jabbar and all this other gear. I was like, why have you turned up with this? Because we have to wear it when we come into a mosque. Because they're understanding, and I feel for them because I might not know about a subject that they know about.
Yeah.
So I'm not having a go at them. What I'm trying to say is that with such low level understanding, how can you really identify somebody for being radical or not?
Yeah, it's like because we have a table, we speak to a lot of non-Muslims, all the time. Non-Muslim, people of faith, people of no faith, and they don't, we go, we think we pray to Prophet Muhammad, we think they don't even know about Islam. And now then people have been asked to spy on
so building that understanding is important, but we can't let people get away with misconceptions and use that as a reason to report each other.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, going through, we've more or less gone through all the points that actually are here. What I wanted to ask you was, I mean, mashallah, you're part of MEND, which do an excellent job. I help out as well, volunteer when I can as well. And what I want to ask is, what can people do? Where can we go from here? What would you advise people to do? I know, tell them about the masterclass classes and things that are going on and things. If you can just explain a little bit about that as well.
Well, we kind of touched upon some of this when Ibrahim mentioned the point about the community. I think, alhamdulillah, don't be discouraged. The fact that this bill has gone through and you signed a petition, don't be discouraged. The important thing is, we have a job here. Allah Ta'ala has provided us with an opportunity to stand up for something that we believe in and not let our religion be watered down or our way of life be watered down, because our religion, as you've reinforced a couple of times, Billa, doesn't have anything to do with terrorism or radicalization as the government would recognize it. So why should we be apologetic about our religion? Why should we hide about our religion? So my message to everyone is that it's really, really important you understand how the system works. Why? Because it's not, I know everybody says we've only got a little bit amount of time in the day, but potentially, and again I don't mean to sound alarming, the lives of your children are at risk, the life of your future in Britain's at risk, and the future of British Islam's at risk. If you see what happened in America, potentially the more of these kind of misconceptions that go out there and the more Muslim communities viewed in suspicion, you're going to see the kind of attack that you saw against Muhammad Salim Khan, which led to his death because somebody killed him outside a mosque for being a Muslim. Do we really want to live in that kind of society? Because today it might not be me, but tomorrow it could well be me.
My father, I've heard of other people, the elders, they say, they'll make your life so hard, you'll leave on your own.
And we never used to believe it, did we?
No, we didn't.
We used to say, oh no, don't worry, uncle, or dad, that generation when they used to tell us that, we see, this is not possible. But can you see now, looking forward 10 years, now
they were predicting it started coming out.
It's starting coming true. So it's important, if our futures, and I don't see my future anywhere else other than Britain, then we start, absolutely. So we start standing up for our rights. So what's important here is, whether it's MEND, in the way of when we ask you to go and speak to your MP about this counter-terrorism bill, tomorrow it'll be about something else that affects the Muslims or affects your lives. It's really, really important. The option to do nothing no longer exists. Not if you're a Muslim, because if you do nothing, if the majority of us do nothing, as we've already seen, our lives will become more and more difficult, or we'll be spoken on behalf of by people like Anjum Chaudhry and Majid Nawaz. Is that who you want as your representative? Well, they might represent their own group of people, but that's the point, they will forever be your representatives, and they'll be the ones consulting on your behalf. So it's not, by me talking to a politician doesn't mean I agree with, half the things that he does. You've got to remember, this country has a tradition where people like Winston Churchill, or even Sylvia Pankhurst, who fought for the rights of women, they changed their parties because to get there through their own changes. It's not about being tribal. It's not saying, all right, because I've now engaged with this politician, I'm no longer, that means I agree with everything that they do. It's not. You have a right, these people are elected. This is a system that you're in, whether you're a taxi driver and you've accepted, planning decisions from your local authority, or you've accepted that, your child's education is free or not. That comes from government as well. We forget that all these other things come from government. So it's really, really important. I understand people are not going to be as active as you and me, and they haven't got the time to do that. However, I would still say you need to do small things. Like, for example, like you mentioned, what we do with what we do at MEND as well. It's going to come. It's going to be elections soon. 85 days from now, there's going to be a general election, right? Every Muslim should hold their politicians to account, find out what their views were on the counter-terrorism bill, find out what their views are on things that affect your life, on foreign policies that affect Muslims, find out what their views are on, say, invite them to your mosque, invite them to your community centre, hold them to account, hold hustings. You've been involved in this kind of thing in the past. It's important. Most of the time, the reason we're at fault is not because the system's against us. It's just we're you're against the system. We're not asking the system enough.
And it's like saying, why do you vote for a certain party? Oh, because my parents did it, and my grandparents did it.
Exactly.
And that's why they vote. But they don't know what the
Understand, exactly. And the relationship between you and your politicians and other people in the establishment is, I say this because I've been, I'll say this, is, look, we've always understood it from the very simple perspective of, we need them, we need them. No, actually, they need us.
Yeah, they do. They need.
And once you understand that relationship, they need us. Then you're going to ask the right questions. It's not about getting a picture. It's not about him undercover. Passing your planning permission or whatever it is. These are public officials, hold them to account.
Yeah, you've elected them. But the thing is, there's a very, very easy way through the MEN website. You can get through each MP for each each different town. You get through.
And if you're more interested in the system, as some people are, because we're now getting, alhamdulillah, on Sunday we've got a masterclass here in Manchester at the Manchester Metropolitan University. Alhamdulillah, some people are interested in understanding exactly how the media works. So what's the difference between print and broadcast media? What they're interested in. They want to know that when they saw a Channel 4 documentary about Islam, which they thought misrepresented Islam, they want to now know that before we just used to complain to Channel 4, it was probably the wrong thing to do. What we needed to complain to was the regulator, which is Ofcom,
Ofcom.
That would have carried more weight. But Channel 4 was never going to turn around to me and say, oh, sorry, don't complain to us, complain to Ofcom. So people need to, it's not about, people who attend our media masterclass are not going to become media professionals. It's just, when the time comes, some issue affects them locally or whatever it is, they understand how and where the triggers of influence are. I remember the brothers and sisters in Birmingham, when they were telling me about the CCTV cameras that were fitted in, the so-called spy cameras in Muslim communities.
Approximately 1,500 or something?
Yeah, 1,500. And they were, when they did eventually find out about them, they didn't know who to turn to and how the system worked to get the apology. They eventually worked it out, and what they said would have been useful is, we're very reactive as a community. Let's not react to the incident. Let's get to know how things work. So if something happens where it becomes difficult for me or my neighbour or my local mosque, I'm in a position where I can make the difference. No one's asking anybody to become a politician overnight. No one's asking anybody to become a journalist overnight. Although for some people, that's what they may well do. What we're asking is we need this basic level of education for our activists, including myself. I need to understand better how the parliament.
We all need reminding as well, don't we, of how we can do it. I mean,
you never stop learning.
Exactly. I mean, you've got master classes for politics. You've also got it for media. How you can complain, what you can do if you see something you don't like on the media. I mean, if you can give an example of what you've done, because I believe there's quite a few things that you've done with the media. How you've
but for example, you've been part of this Billa. It's very, very simple. We have like action alerts which we email people about. I know yourselves when it came to the issue around the flag flying at the time of the Gaza crisis in July or Ramzan time. There was a poll on the Guardian which left it.
That was in Glasgow, or
in Glasgow or Edinburgh. But it was in the Guardian, the poll, and the poll, it indicated at one point that most people who were on that online poll, I think some 40-odd% of people agreed that it was a good thing that they were going to fly the Palestinian flag. The majority disagreed, And by the time you guys got onto it as activists, you changed the whole dynamic of the poll completely. It was like at 80%, If you look at what's been happening over the past few days, the fact that, previously we felt powerless, but if you look at the fact that, with the Chapel Hill shootings in America, most people felt that the media, besides the Independent, hadn't reported this. And if it was not a Muslim and somebody had been killed for being any other race or any other faith, it would have been headline news, and it would have been described as a terrorist act, as what it was.
Had it been a Muslim behind the gun, it would have been a different thing.
Absolutely, but this is the important point. 5 years ago, I know we would have just got annoyed, and that's it. Now, alhamdulillah, you saw what happened on social media. Automatically, because people were annoyed that the media wasn't covering it, it was trending worldwide.
It right at the top.
Muslim Lives Matter was trending all over the world.
You don't need the media sometimes. You can use these
tools. Or you can influence the media then, because then the media realizes the language that works with the media. It then realizes this is on the MEN website, or this is trending. We need to get onto this now. We need to report this. So where you've previously felt
the BBC, they waited right until the end, and they're not. And people coming over because I put it onto my social media, and then people was coming on. I said, "What's happened? What's happened?" It's nowhere. You can't see it anywhere. And the only one, I think the Independent was the only one that
had reported it.
And reported it, and nobody else did.
But people use them, they're independent, to really get the message out there.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm saying, we no longer need to feel powerless. There's a lot of tools available, whether it's through the social media. We have somebody who works specifically on social media, alhamdulillah, and we do lots of events around that. Again, we make people understand. One of the sessions on Sunday's Media Masterclass will be about how social media works. Most people know, but just gives you some kind of context on where to make the triggers of influence. What's the difference between Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram? What is which kind of platform? Which is a platform like YouTube, which allows you to broadcast, which is the one that allows you to engage, like Facebook. These are the things that break down. This might sound, not necessarily interesting to most people, but the point is, if you want to make a difference, these things are available to you. This education is available to you for free. I would only encourage people to access it.
Yeah, I know. Well, men, they're doing an absolutely brilliant job. These master classes, I've been on them, the politics one, they're absolutely super. And if you take one thing away, believe you me, you'll have a massive effect. And if you do hear of these, master classes, if you want to get involved, the website for your
Mend is www.mend.org.uk. Now, we have local groups of activists in Bolton,
we do,
in Manchester, up and down the country, and on demand, community groups or ulamas will regularly ask us to come and speak up about a particular subject. Run a workshop on the counter-terrorism bill, run a workshop on X, Y, and Z. That's something we can come and deliver. Just get in touch with us, inshallah.
MashaAllah. I just want to say Jazakallah khair to Brother Yusuf. MashaAllah, we could have gone on and on, but we just wanted to give you a little bit of an understanding of what is going on. The counter-terrorist bill, so many of us were there and we ignored it. I know, the thing is though, now it's actually gone through, and when it starts affecting us, our family, and people that we know, you'll hear about it, it'll start affecting people, and then you'll think, why did I not do something, why? But the thing is though, it's how we go forward from here, what changes. But inshallah, I will invite Yusuf back, definitely. I'm going to invite back, and I've asked him if he can do some shows as well. This guy, alhamdulillah, knows so much about politics. You know a lot more than we do, but this is why, when we thought about this, the first person I thought of was Brother Yusuf to actually come down. And I just want to say a big jazakallah khair, and I hope people take something away from this. If you want to get in touch with men, you can do that as well. And, please, if you've got anything that you want to add to this, or there's something that you want to speak about, then please do get in touch with Brit Asia Buzz, or the channel is called B-Buzz Channel on YouTube. B-Buzz Channel on YouTube. You can go there and you can view our past recordings, or you can pop down to the actual Brit Asian Buzz the media centre here on Derby Street. If you ask, we'll give you the address. We probably know it down. And I just want to say Jazakallah khair, and thank you for listening to all our viewers. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.